The spring anime season came and went as quickly as my dad did, and what we were left with was a fantastic season of long-awaited sequels. We had part 2s, part 3s, part 4s, and even part 1.5s that have jam-packed this season with more classics than the Eagles' greatest hits. There were some pretty good originals for this season as well, the biggest being the one with a boy and a girl and their obsession over a star. That's right, Insomniacs After School is the show that everyone is talking about. Okay, just kidding, but as good as the sequels were, the originals this season were able to hold their own. And today, I'm going to discuss the best anime from spring 2023. And if you don't want to miss coverage of the future anime seasons, then I humbly ask you to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the reviews for the upcoming seasons. Entering as an underdog show for me was My Love Story with Yamada-kun at level 999. I really wasn't expecting a romance anime to keep my attention and half expected this to be a worse Gamers. However, I was pleasantly surprised by a serious narrative that focused on both protagonists developing a meaningful connection between each other. If you're looking for a no-nonsense, or maybe low-nonsense is a better way to describe it, love story, then My Love Story with Yamada should definitely be near the top of your list. Another show I thought wasn't going to make it past the first 3 episodes was Hell's Paradise, but I'm very glad I stuck around because I believe it is the dark horse of the season. A story surrounding a mysterious ninja assassin who is the bane of all guillotines is sent by the Emperor along with several other criminals to an island to find the elixir of life in exchange for a pardon. What seemed kind of dry in the beginning for me, especially since I was watching the Shinigami arc in Gintama at the same time, soon had me hook, line, and sinker once they got to the island and the real story began. Action, mystery, and some really cool fights were pushed to the forefront while not overshadowing the character development for our protagonist ninja and the executioner accompanying him. By the end of it, 13 episodes is not enough for me, and I will patiently wait for season 2. Switching gears from Hell's Paradise, we can now look towards the heavens with Insomniacs After School. Another romance anime this season that blew me away. Giving off similar aesthetic vibes as Call of the Night combined with a genuine relationship building as something like Your Lie in April, this anime directly targets me. The comfy vibes in a chill setting with 2 mellow protagonists who suffer from insomnia and end up starting an astronomy club at school to keep sleeping in the observatory is a perfect wind-down anime for the day. It brought a calmness of the likes of Yuru Camp, and I personally give this one my seal of approval as a certified muffin classic. I love the relationship between our 2 main characters and the slow nature of the story and the relaxed vibe that they give off as they discover that each other is the thing they really needed in their lives. Aside from that, they bring this nostalgic feeling of back when I was in high school, and these would have been the types of people that I hung out with, and it reminds me a bit of my friend group from back then. Despite all of this praise, it's not my best of season for new anime, and I will mention the best of season at the end of the video after we get through this long list of sequels. To start that list, we have the long-awaited Ancient Magus Bride Season 2. I'm a huge fan of the first season, and it is at the top of my list for fantasy anime. Moving over to this new season though, I was a bit disappointed for it to turn into a school arc, but the plot shifted its focus away from going to college and being a student almost immediately into the season, so I'm not sure why even pretend to be in college in the first place. Overall, Magus Bride keeps the charm of being a spirited fantasy series that's not strayed far from the overall tone that makes this one of the best pure fantasy anime of all time. If you're not familiar with the original work, the Ancient Magus Bride is set in rural England and uses many myths and legends from that part of the world where our lovable cast interacts with the various good and evil spirits in a more episodic manner. If you are a fan of fantasy, both seasons and the OVA are a must-watch for you. Another fantasy series that should be on your radar is Ranking of Kings, which has the not quite season 2 airing now, Ranking of Kings: The Treasure Chest of Courage. Acting as more of a season 1.5, the Treasure Chest of Courage fills in some of the holes in the world and expands our insight on some of the events that took place in the first season. It might have a goofy little art style, but do not make the same mistake that I did and dismiss the series by judging it by its cover. This is actually a well-written piece of fantasy literature that has a story that will have you on the edge of your seat from the beginning. I can enjoy this story's setting and characters even more now that the Treasure Chest of Courage has aired this season, and my hunger for more is satiated for now, at least until the next season airs. Another anime that I love that had a season 1.5, or maybe it's more of a 0.75 in this case, is Konosuba, An Explosion on This Wonderful World. Yet again, thrusting Megumin into the spotlight because a movie wasn't enough, we get her origin story all the way from her life in the Crimson Demon Village up until she was introduced in the main story of Konosuba. With each episode containing various war crimes, this series is still nothing short of a pleasure to watch and proves once again that Konosuba is the only isekai that matters. It was nice for it to air on Wednesdays again as well, as it brought me back to when I would skip my college chemistry class to watch the original show the second the simulcast was up. Sure, it was some absolute degen behavior, but it was all in the spirit of Konosuba. Speaking of degen behavior, Golden Kamuy has resumed Season 4 after its long hiatus due to the loss of a production member. Shortly after its return, we get an all-time Golden Kamuy moment where we see a fat battle between Usami and Jack the Ripper impersonator. That all starts with Usami method fapping as if he were the killer to determine where the best wank spot would be after a murder. Complete with Matrix-esque dodging and a high-speed chase, these moments are why Golden Kamuy has solidified its spot at the top of many watchers' all-time lists. At its core, Golden Kamuy is a story taking place right after the Russo-Japanese War where a portion of the army is searching for the indigenous people of Japan, the Ainu's, stash of gold. The map to this gold is tattooed on the bodies of prisoners from Hokkaido's most isolated prison, and the daughter of the man who created the map is being sought to decipher the code. Our protagonist, the immortal Sugimoto, named for his feats during the war, ends up teaming up with her to help return the gold to her people. This anime is filled with lots of laughs and only gets better the more you watch. You'll need to grind out the first season though, especially with the stigma it has about the bad CG bear, but I can assure you, a bear returns in season 4 properly animated. If you're looking for your next show, Golden Kamuy should be up next as it is supremely underappreciated. Moving on to briefly cover the shows that do overshadow our other anime, which is okay. We have Demon Slayer, the Swordsmith Village arc, and Dr. Stone, New World. Our shonen titles have brought it once again this season, with Demon Slayer not disappointing until the last episode, which did not land with a lot of the audience, me included. As someone who watched and enjoyed all of Black Clover start to finish, I couldn't help but find Tanjiro as the most annoying shonen protagonist of all time in the final episode of that arc. Visually though, Ufotable did their job and the fights were extremely well done. Technically being 11 episodes, but some of them being extended runs, it was a bit shorter than most had hoped, but it will undoubtedly be back. Then we have Dr. Stone, which also ran for 11 episodes this season in a shorter than usual run. I don't have much to say about Dr. Stone either. It's another season of Dr. Stone and it's exactly what you'd expect had you seen the previous seasons. Another anime that was more of the same and is now finished narratively is Birdie Wing, Girls Golf Story. I was a bit disappointed that they ended it so abruptly. I would have greatly enjoyed more seasons of this, contrary to how unappealing the title sounds. This might be a story about golf, but it is one of the most anime stories of all time, with the golf being extreme underground mafia golf for millions of dollars. The story then transitions into high school because anime, where our two female leads who totally love each other but don't love each other become pros so that they can face off in their ultimate match. In a story where every golf swing is a special ability and the opponents have some type of power, Birdie Wing is a great show to save for when your list is running thin. It honestly isn't for everyone, and had I not watched it seasonally, I probably would not have watched it at all. I am happy that I made it to the end though, because it is one of those anime where it's about the journey and not the destination. At last, we've reached the last anime that I have not picked for one of the anime of the season, Mobile Suit Gundam: The Witch from Mercury. Not to say that this show was bad by any means, I just never had a good segue transition to it earlier. Like I said in my previous video, covering the first season, I was originally turned onto the show by Yoasobi doing the opening and my friends who have watched other Gundams telling me that this was a fine one to start with. What I got was a crazy ride full of narrative turmoil where the pacing went from slow to fast to sonic to slow to fast again. All to wrap up in the end in a somewhat unsatisfying conclusion where I can't watch the aftermath. Really, I would only say the conclusion is unsatisfying since there won't be more episodes this season. I really enjoyed the political aspects of the show and I wish it could have been fleshed out a bit more instead of just having the entity's motivation implied or stated after a major plot point happened. The sound design for the show was on point, and the visuals weren't bad at all, especially in the fights where there was constant movement. Overall, I'm impressed with Witch from Mercury, and maybe leaning towards exploring more of the Gundam universe in the future. And finally, we have made it through the long list of shows to reach the best of season, which I've divided into the best new show and the best returning show. For our new show this season, I have to give it to Oshinoko, but it was very close for me. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a big enjoyer of Insomniacs after school, but looking at the show as a whole in all aspects, Oshinoko is the obvious choice. This is unbiased, even if it was blessed by Yoasobi for the opening with Idol, which blew up and I hope has led people to discover more of their discography since they do not miss. I also greatly enjoyed the ending, Mephisto by Queen Bee. Oshinoko did not initially grip me, as the way the whole mentally old guy in a child's body thing was weird, but at the end of the day, it's anime and weirder things will happen. What really sold me on the show was episode 6 on ego surfing, and how social media comments can affect the mental health of people in the public eye. You can hate a character, but you can't hate an actor that plays the character, and some people can't distinguish that and talk online like they are the superior beings who are morally invincible. I also love a good mystery as much as the next person, and following our genius protagonist as he lays his plans gives off a sort of Death Note vibes from the midway point of this anime. Now, I don't recognize this show as the second coming of FMAB, and the initial hype phase of these shows is tiring. My anime list should not allow ratings on shows that aren't finished airing because I think it draws unnecessary bias for both sides of people who can't think for themselves and the contrarians. With a second season announced, I know for sure this saga will continue, much like the last anime I'm here to talk about, the best of season, Vinland Saga. Vinland Saga Season 2 started in the winter season and is now finished this spring. I loved Vinland Saga when it initially aired in 2019, and the new season switched gears on viewers by offering us not Vikings fighting every episode, but rather farming and healing trauma. The meatheads who couldn't stand the change might disagree with me and say this season was trash and too slow, but to that I say maybe you're spoiled by large time skips where your shonen protagonist grows a foot and gains 150 pounds of muscle, but that's not anything close to realistic. The raw portrayal of coping with PTSD and the consequences of murdering all of the people in the previous season for Thorfinn was crucial to the story continuing. If he couldn't come to terms with his actions and find the resolve to be a better person who avoids violence at all costs, then this story would have ended with Thorfinn as a depressed slave. I said in my winter video that Season 2 Episode 9 is still one of the single best anime episodes that I've ever seen, and continuing the trend, Episode 23 isn't quite that tier, but it is my second favorite episode of Vinland Saga. I absolutely love the confrontation with Canute in that episode, a character from the first season who's also drastically changed and almost an inverse of Thorfinn. The visuals, the sounds, the voice acting, it was all incredible, even drawing praise from the series creator Makoto Yukimura. I absolutely love Vinland Saga, and this season confirmed its spot in my top 5 of all time, up there with the likes of Monster and Link Click, the latter of which will have a second season starting shortly for the summer of 2023. If you somehow have not watched Vinland Saga yet, I implore you to give it a watch, as it is the best anime of the season and it really sets itself apart from all other anime airing, but it's also just a fantastic work that is 100% worth your time. And another thing that I hope was worth your time was this video. I appreciate you for making it this far, and it would mean a lot to me if you could drop a comment down below about your favorite anime of this season, as I know there were some good ones that I did not get to. The music section I have for this season is shockingly light for the amount of anime that I watch, but I still have had Mephisto on repeat as well as the others you see on the screen now. So that's going to wrap it up for the Spring 2023 review. It certainly was a longer journey than the past seasons, but with all of the great shows that aired, it was still a real treat. Thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you all later.